And with that, we are live for the next episode of Puro Sabor 2021. Welcome, one and all. Good evening to all you dedicated cigar lovers, to all our dear friends, family, wherever you'll be tuning in from. Asia, Europe, the Middle East, the United States. We're excited to have you all and grateful for a lovely turnout of people here at this wonderful episode. And we have two amazing and stellar guests joining us tonight. But before we get to them, let's say a big fat hello to our dear brother, Ride, over in Dubai. Right, early mornings over there. Thank you for being here with us. I can't wait to get this next episode underway, and thank you so much for being here with me, as always, for the show.
Likewise, sir. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be with you. I just hope it stays at 2 a.m. and the next time it's not at 4 a.m. But always a pleasure. We have amazing people with us today. We're very honored and blessed to have them with us. And we thank you for making the time, for sure, everybody.
Now, our two special guests for tonight are Karen Berger from K by Karen Berger and Dankiki Cigars, joining us from, I believe, Daytona at the moment. Is that correct, Karen?
That's correct, from Daytona.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Welcome, and thank you for being here with us. And our second guest for tonight is the one and only Skip Martin from Austin, Texas, from Romacraft Tobacco. Skip, thank you so much for being here with us again. We had the pleasure of sharing a Light 'em Up live already, but now new setting, new format. Thanks for being here with us and taking the time.
Sure.
Excellent.
Good to be here.
Excellent. Good to have you both here. Karen, Skip, what a pleasure, really. And let's get this started. I'm sure a lot of people are very eager to listen to all the kind of answers and the kind of explanations you're going to have. Let me first congratulate you for carving this amazing name for yourselves, both as individuals, Karen and Skip, and definitely as brands. Since the topic of our discussion today is small manufacturers, I would love to hear from each and every one of you, if you may, a bit of a definition of what is a small manufacturer as far as you are concerned. Because it's very, at least for me, confusing when you talk about a small manufacturer, yet the name or the reputation or the brand is very well known. And when you go to a lot of cigar places or shops or retailers worldwide, you mention the name and they know it automatically. So how is small defined as far as you're concerned? And let's start with you, Karen.
Hi, thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for enjoying us at Puro Sabor 2021. For me, as a lot of a pleasure to be here. In my consideration, a small factory, I qualify as a small factory business owner. So the term small factory for me refer in terms of size cigar. There are a large factories because the structure of the factory is very large. The employees the capacity of the employee that I have is really big. In my case, I consider a small factory because the capacity I have of producing and also the capacity that I have in my factory with the number of my employees. In terms about how many I have been in the factory as a small factory, in the business as a small factory, we have a large presence in the market. We are based in Estelí, Nicaragua since 90. We are a small company with a strong base.
Excellent. Skip?
So, the way I kind of look at it is, there's this spectrum of size that goes from, and there's chinchaos in Estelí that have one pair, right? It's a guy and his wife who, after getting off of work at night, will make cigars in their home. all the way up to factories like Drew Estate. So one pair can generally make about 300, 400 cigars a day, about 2,000 cigars a week. So, you've got factories that make 150, 180,000 cigars a day, like Drew Estate, or AJ, I think is up to about 120,000 cigars a day. So, they have 3,000 employees, for example, right? So for me, I think the break between small, medium, large, and extra large, when you're less than 25 or 30, when you're less than 20 pairs, which would be about 20 pairs would be about 50,000 cigars a week. That's what I think is kind of the small side of the handcrafted, hand rolled cigar business. So that's about 2 million, 3 million cigars a year. Under that level, you're still fairly small. When you get above 3 million to about 7 million, I would say you're medium. There's a lot of factories that fall in that range. Even factories like Padron are probably somewhere between the 7 and 8 million. Companies like La Flor Dominicana are probably in the 4 to 5 million range. So they're kind of the medium companies. And then you have really kind of the large factories that are between 10 and 15 million. That would be cigar factories like Aganorsa, factories like Plasencia, which I assume is in that range. And then you would have the extra large factories like Drew Estate, like AJ Fernandez, like Scandinavia Tobacco, which may actually be in the medium range now. But regardless of the size of the factory, which really is determined by kind of how many pairs they have. There's factories that grow tobacco. For example, Karen is fairly small, but like she said, she has a lot of employees and she has a lot of capacity. So, and they grow their own tobacco right there in Estelí, some of their filler tobacco, right? So they're a smaller organization that grows their own tobacco. And then you have really big organizations like Scandinavia that don't necessarily, most of the super majority of tobacco they grow aren't on their own farms. So there's a lot of different variables in terms of the size of the overall organization from the farm to sales. But if you're talking about just factories specifically, us at 12 pairs, we make about 25,000 cigars a week, about 1.2 million cigars a year. I would say we're on the large, kind of in the middle of the small factories.
Okay, thank you.
Now, first of all, I would love to let everybody know, whether you're joining us here at the lounge or all our dear friends and family over on YouTube. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the comments or use the raise your hand function here in Zoom, and we'll happily forward all your questions to Karen and Skip. But since we talk about all these detailed numbers, Skip, and small, like what is small, and there's so many other terms that get thrown around quite a bit, like boutique or the term craft. Like, how do you handle all these various different terminologies? How do you go about these different points of reference, and where do you draw the line between like a small factory and when is boutique or craft truly craft?
Well, to the people in Nicaragua, those words really don't mean much. If you're a worker at a factory in Estelí, for example, their perspective is more around from a size perspective is, for example, if you're in a larger factory, generally you have to take a bus to get to work, right? It's because you have to go to kind of the outside of town or over to Rosario. If you work at one of these smaller factories, a lot of times you can just walk over, or you're very close because they're the smaller factories. A lot of them are actually in town. So we're right next to one of the larger supermarkets. We're about a block and a half from that. La Zona, for example, is about our size. They're very close to the other side of the park. So there's a lot of really small factories that are kind of in the middle of town. Another one is whether kind of how you interact in the factory. In terms, for example, in our factories, we still pay payrolls in cash on Friday. We don't have a biometric system where they have to clock in and clock out. Some people, they're managed a lot more loosely than they are, say, for example, in a big factory. So from a worker perspective, I think there's a lot more kind of quality. It depends on the worker. Some people like the structure of the larger factories. In a larger factory, for example, there's a lot more opportunity to move up, right? Like if you're a really good cigar roller, you're going to advance to more complicated sizes where you get paid more. And but generally you kind of work on one size at a time, and then you move up to the next one, then you move up to the next one. Then maybe you become a supervisor or a quality person. And then there's an opportunity to kind of move up within the factory. In our factory, there's a lot more variety of work because today you might be working on one thing, tomorrow you might be working on another. But there's really not a lot of opportunity to move up because we have one floor supervisor and that's, the only, there's no, that guy's not leaving. So there's really, you're never going to get promoted per se. But at the same time, there's a lot more flexibility in our factory in terms of we have ladies that take their kids to school instead of just putting them on a bus or whatever. They take longer lunches for their kids to go to school in the afternoon, or they come in later. They stay a little bit later. Some ladies or some people need to kind of leave a little bit earlier, so they come in a little bit earlier. So each pair kind of starts when they want to start, and then they finish when they finish. So and the same thing for all of the other roles in the factory. In terms of the quality, there's advantages and disadvantages of being small, which we could get to kind of more in detail later. But most of those terms you mentioned are really related to how they're marketed. And for us, it's kind of let the product speak for itself. The marketing terms don't matter as much. Craft for us refers to the attention to detail that we put into the whole process. Kind of like comparing, for example, a craft beer manufacturer to, say, a big mass market manufacturer. There's a big difference between, say, your local brewery, microbrewery, and, say, Anheuser-Busch. In the United States, that's the case. If you go to Europe, for example, like in Germany, the quality of beer is pretty good across the board, but because of the requirements, the product are all very similar. In the United States, in the beer market, the things that are smaller generally are more kind of adventurous. They're more out there in terms of, you're not trying to sell 3 million of something. You only have to sell 150 or 200,000 of something. So that opens up a lot of, in terms of the quality of materials you can use. And it also opens up a lot in terms of you don't have to try to appeal to millions of people. You can only appeal to a very small market. So in that sense, we're very similar to the beer industry in that what we focus on is making a very specific kind of cigar, which is really full-bodied, medium full to strong in terms of strength. And because we're small, we can use a lot of different kinds of tobaccos because we don't have to use our own grown material, right? We don't have two farms and we don't have a farm in Jalapa and a farm in Estelí where we have to consume all that material. We can go out and pick and choose and buy the kind of material that we want. So we actually, for a very small factory, use a lot of different kinds of tobacco. So, and then in the market, we really focus on a very small segment of the cigar smokers. And even over in Europe, we focus on a very small segment of New World cigar smokers. And, that's kind of our approach.
I think you just beautifully depicted some of these very important nuances and all these different shades of beautiful tobacco brown in those different worlds between the small, mid-size, and larger factories, as you would experience with large companies, no matter which industry you're in, or a small family-run enterprise. And it's really about not one being better than the other, but just different approaches and different ways of handling things. And that, I believe, is very important. And thanks for sharing that in such an insightful way.
Yeah, well, that's an important point. I think that there are small cigar manufacturers that make really not so great cigars, and there's really large factories that make amazing cigars, right? So this idea that just because you're smaller makes you better isn't necessarily true. There's definitely some advantages of being small. For example, when I go buy a U.S. Connecticut broadleaf, that's one of our core lines, and I can go buy a very specific priming, a very specific texture, ferment it exactly the way I want, and 4,000 or 5,000 pounds is enough for me to make enough cigars for a whole year. Whereas through a state that makes 180,000 cigars a year, the Liga Privada is a perfectly good cigar, but there's a very small amount of cigar that they can make of that type, and so they buy whole fields of broadleaf. And then because they make that Liga Privada, they have the material where they also have to make undercrown. They also have to make papa fritas. They also have to make the really low priming stuff they put into acid, right? So it's, if you looked at it like they go buy the whole cow, they can make steaks, and they're fully capable of making really high end prime steaks. But they also have to make hamburgers and hot dogs and sausage and right and leather shoes, and they have to use the whole cow, right? We just go out and buy the very specific kind of material that we need, and we're lucky that we're able to do that because it's very competitive to do that. I mean, obviously my partner Esteban has been in this business for since the 90s, and so he has a lot of relationships. Karen has a similar situation where Kiki, which I'd love to at some point talk about his influence on me when I first got to Estelí. But, Kiki has relationships that go back 30, 40 years. And so as a small factor, having access to buy the kind of material need is not necessarily the norm. There's a lot of small factories that will buy opportunistically, but you'll see a lot more kind of like limited editions and things coming out of those factories that are kind of the prime product. But the majority of what they make is kind of like, and you don't know a lot of these factories, but a lot of them, I mean, there's a factory that I'm thinking of that makes 5 million cigars a year. You've never heard of them. Most people have never been there, but all they make is unbanded, bundled cigars for clients like Thompson's, right? That sell for, $20, $25 a bundle. So, a lot of the chinchaos or the small factories are like that, where they're doing overflow production of kind of the lower quality brands. For example, AJ Fernandez, if he has a big demand for kind of one of these catalog cigars, he may outsource a small portion of that production to a really small factory that has 4 or 5 rollers, over here in this part of town, and he'll give them the material, but that factory, you would never have heard of it. I mean, I would say Karen may know better than me, but I would say there's probably as many as 50 small factories from 1 to 10 pairs that you've never heard of that operate in Estelí. Most of them are not members of the chamber because they just don't have the scale to do that. There's 5 or 6 factories the size of ours, like La Zona, and little factories like Black Label and Ace Prime, those factories. And then there's medium-sized factories that almost everyone's heard of, like Aganorsa, but there's also medium-sized factories no one's heard of that make a lot of these catalog kind of cigars. You know, it goes back to when you grow a field of tobacco. There's prime tobacco, there's prime cuts of meat, and then there's somebody has to make the hot dogs, right? So there's a lot of factories that buy the low priming stuff that use kind of binder quality material for wrapper. They're still making it by hand. And, you know, so what I'm describing is this ecosystem that exists in Estelí. And in this ecosystem, we all need each other to work, to survive. So, you know, there's definitely a place for the super premium production. There's definitely a place for the medium and the lower end production. And even like our scraps and stuff will go to, we have a big facility in Estelí that makes the tobacco wraps for kind of making marijuana cigarettes, right? But if that place didn't exist to consume our scrap, if the bundle manufacturing didn't exist to consume the bottom parts of the plant or the lower quality material, then the whole system wouldn't work, right? So it requires, you know, acid, for example, that probably uses a lot of the lower priming materials, premium material, but lower priming. If they didn't consume as much Viso and Seco that they do in that acid product, then that factory as a system wouldn't work to make things like Liga Privada. And the same thing happens on a large level in the ecosystem of Estelí. If there weren't those lower level kind of factories making bundle cigars and those kinds and the blunt wraps, then the whole ecosystem wouldn't really work.
Karen, any thoughts?
So what do you think about that, Karen? Do you have a perspective?
Yes, I agree with you. And some point that also we had the same focus between talking about the small company and also large company is the point that always everybody is focusing to keep the consistency. When we are talking about the small factories, I think that we had a really advantage as a small factory. We had more control about in quality. Quality, I am talking about how to keep, how to get our raw material, the perfect raw material, the perfect aging material to keep the quality, to keep the quality in our cigars. When we are talking about the small factory, we are talking also about the quality versus quantity cigar. So as you said before, my factory has, we have also 12, a couple of people working in the production area. So minimal production per couple is 350 cigar. So we are in the annual production of around 150,000 cigar. So for our main focus is to keep our quality in our cigar, the consistency, and get the best raw material in the market. So to have competence in this big industry.
Yeah, so Karen's facility is very similarly sized to ours. So I think she said 150,000 a year, but really it's like 1 million a year, I think, that Karen produces. And like Karen said, one of the big differentiators being small is quality. And that's what you'll hear a lot. I mentioned that just because you're small doesn't necessarily mean you have high quality. It really, that depends on your quality of material. But in the process, obviously, I can sit in front of our rolling gallery and I can see every single person and I can hear all the sounds in the factory. And the person who checks every single one of the 1.2 million cigars every year is the same person, right? So we physically pick up every cigar and see whether it weighs correctly. Our roller generally will check the quality of the buncher, and those kinds of things you don't see in a big factory. In a big factory, what you'll see a lot of times is that people will make the cigars, they get packaged up and they get sent to an area in the back of the factory where someone will review them. the hundreds of thousands of cigars a day, and they review some percentage of them, some percentage they put through a draw master, because they have on the rolling floor in the 1,000 or 2,000 pairs of rollers, they have people who've been doing it for years and people who've been doing it for weeks, right?
Yeah.
And so the quality, in the spectrum of quality in that large, no single person has their eyes on the whole production at any given time. It takes dozens of people to check the quality. In our factory, in Karen's factory, Karen knows every single person that works for her by name. Karen handpicked them. One of the advantages that we have, for example, is, and I'll frame it as a challenge, because they have to work on different size cigars all the time. We can't afford to lose people. When we hire someone, it's someone who already has a lot of experience. I mean, Esteban, because he was at Latin Cigar, he knows a large percentage of people who make cigars in Estelí, the people who've been doing it for 5-10 years. Karen has the same advantage. So when she needs a new pair of people or a new person, she has already in her mind 15, 20, 30 people that fit the qualifications. Then she goes and tells those people, hey, I'm ready. I have a spot for you. And once that person comes in, they don't leave. Well, we have in Estelí, we have something like 67 employees, but 24 of those are cigar makers. We've only lost 3 cigar makers in 10 years. And I could tell you that is an unheard of number, right? So we've only turned over 3 cigars. So once they started working for us, there's only 3 people in 10 years that no longer work for us. When you go into packaging, there's a few more, maybe 5 or 6 people we've had turned over. When you go to the deveining, the despadillo, there's maybe a few people, and we've, maybe when you talk about the people that move around inventory, raw material, the kind of the strong guys, we've lost a few of those guys because the alcohol. Esteban always says, always hire religious guys and ugly women, because the ugly women have no social life and the religious guys aren't borrachos. So we are very good. Once we hire someone, once we select someone, they stay there for a long time. And because of that, they understand our system. There's a small group of people that really have to fit into our organizational culture, into our system. And they understand in detail what our blends are, what kind of tobaccos we use, why we use them, how we do the break, where we put the break, all the little details. And also they understand our position in the market. So if they see a cigar that has a soft spot, it never even makes it to the top of the table. They just set it aside before we put a wrapper on it, and we just make a new one, because they're that invested into the quality. And so, like Karen said, in a small factory, you can manage that. In a factory with 3,000 people, it's a lot more complicated.
A lot of impressive data there, and a lot of impressive numbers as far as your teams are concerned. And obviously, managing a business like a family, it has a lot of advantages. But it almost feels to me as if small, if I may, is a choice. Is it? I mean, everything with life grows. So, for example, when I was last time at LFD's factory, they had just completed their latest expansion plan, and they hit the 5 million production. And Liro and Tony were saying, that's it. No matter what we get, we have no plans whatsoever. We want to keep that size by choice. And I'm like, but why? And their answer was one word: quality. And so my question to you is size, the small size by choice? And naturally, the second question that goes in parallel to this, is it feasible?
I mean, Karen, I've had long conversations with Kiki about this, so I'm sure you have the same opinion.
Yes.
I mean, what's your thought on that?
Yes, they right. So um, to be in a small factory, I think is by choice. So even all that, so we are focusing, as I said before, in quality. So we had, as you said before, Skip. So the relationship that we have with our employees, no many factories have it. So we treat our employees as a family, and as a family, is a growing together. That our focus is growing together as a small step that we have, a small step that we are growing together. So I in that moment, so my capacity or my expectation in the future, of course, are growing, but I don't want to expand a lot of much, because I feel that I can lose my purpose, my idea, my focus, that is to bring to people um, some quality cigars, so some kind of consistency cigar. So that's my idea.
Karen, if I may ask in a little more detail there, how do you go about that? Do you have like an expansion plan where you think in terms of a certain percentage that you want to grow every single year, or is it more like an organic process where, depending on whether you get a new pair of rollers, skilled people coming in, that you can then very organically and in a very natural process sort of expand the capacity whilst you go?
And I find that question very interesting, Reinhard, if I may add to this, considering the Kiki size and the K by Karen size. So it's very interesting to know your thought process as to what your outlook is, considering where you are today and the past or the history.
So I think that my husband make an amazing job. So today I have a lot of responsibility to keep his legacy alive as a small boutique cigar. So it's like a organic process, all depend how much I have people, how much my team respond to me. I am very thankful right now, because I am building an amazing things for the distribution of my cigars. So we already are in the 25 cigar state in United States. So we are more focused in United States, and also we are working with our cigar in the European market. But as long as we have many people knowing about our quality, about our cigar, about our brand, about our legacy, about our history, so and that step we have the capacity to grow.
Okay.
We had
Yeah, so I think, Reinhardt, so this is something I describe pretty frequently. If you think about it like a chart, right? When you very first start out making cigars, and when we started out, we had one pair. We had two people making cigars in a garage, right? So what happens is it's very, very easy to find raw material. You go out and say, I need 100 pounds of really high quality wrapper. Anybody can find you 100 pounds of wrapper that's really high quality. And you have really high texture, high quality material. Every part of the cigar is perfect. And you only need one press, you only need 10 or 15 molds, and you're off to the races. And from a materials perspective, from a resource perspective, you can find the very best pair of rollers that can make those cigars. And you could sit there and you can make perfect cigars, 350, 400 a day. And the material, the resources, everything's perfect. But the problem is when you're really small, from 1 to 4 to 5 to 10 pairs, but you still need someone who's doing the accounting. You still need someone who does the deveining. You still need someone who does the packaging. And so you have these diseconomies of scale that happen at the really small level, where the administrative kind of aspect, the support role aspect in the factory is not fully utilized. So you have this machine that can produce, from a accounting perspective or from a support perspective, you have this support capacity that can handle, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 cigars a day, but you're only producing 400 cigars a day. So you're really inefficient. And then what happens is you reach a level of economies of scale where you get more efficient, And you reach a level where you have the exact proper match between the support mechanism, the facility, the support mechanism, and the people who are actually making cigars, and your ability to get the high quality material for that number of cigars. That happens somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million cigars a year. What happens at that point is you can no longer buy high quality material. You can no longer handle more employees. You need another accounting person. So you dip back into being inefficient, right? So when you have to start going out and buying raw material, what happens is you say, hey, you know, I'm perfectly fine with you coming in and buying 10 bales of Ligero a year, but now you need 100 bales of Ligero a year. So I need you to buy 200 bales of Viso, 300 bales of Seco if I'm going to sell you this Ligero. Because otherwise, all these kind of larger organizations that buy tobacco from me, if only thing I can sell them is the Viso and Seco, and I'm selling you all the heavy texture tobacco, then what happens is they go find another source. And I have no one to buy the lower priming tobacco. So what happens is once someone reaches 2.5, 3 million cigars a year, especially from a filler perspective, they start growing their own fillers. And when you start growing your own fillers, what happens is you end up having a lot of really high quality material, but you also have a lot of material that you don't use because you only make super premium cigars. So then you start adding people in the rolling gallery, to new people who've never rolled cigars before, to make catalog cigars, to consume that material that you couldn't otherwise use in your super premium product. So you go down in the economies of scale, you get inefficient, and then you start trying to become more efficient. So you start making break-even cigars just to consume the material. But then because you have more people, you need more space. So now you need a new building. Now you need more accounting people. Now you need more ladies in Desperillo. Now you need a larger secadero. Now you need more ladies in packaging, even if it's just cellophane, right? And so what happens is you go through these valleys in these and you work to improve efficiency. And that's why you see factories settling in at certain points, because when you get to 3 million and you can no longer buy tobacco efficiently, you settle at that point. When you decide to get bigger, you got to get to 5 to 7 million to be efficient. And if you decide to go past 7 million, you've got to get to 10, 15 million to become efficient, right? You got to start buying farms. You got to start building industrial sized factories. And then you have so many cigars that now it's affecting what you need on the US side. Now you need more salespeople. Now you have to advertise to reach a broader market. Now you have to sell more in Europe. Now you see what I'm saying? So what happens is, that's why you see these factories, once they reach 1.5, 2 million, 3 million, 2.5 million, that's one point where you see them sticking there. And then you see them sticking at 5 million, then you see them sticking at 10 million. And then after they get past 10 million, they're off to the races. They're producing everything under the sun. They have their own farms. They've got, hundreds of salespeople, and they're about to get purchased by a huge cigar, conglomerate, usually a machine cigar company. Like if you look at the history of Oliva,
yeah,
in Estelí, they reached that 1-2 million, right? And then when they started going to, and they started out making like just bundled cigars, like the Florida Oliva product. Mm-hmm. And then they started growing their own farms, and they had this super premium wrapper and filler. So they started making things like their super premium product. And then when they got a little bit bigger, they started making even more of the other product. So eventually they get to a point where they're like, okay, we're gonna get just bigger and bigger until Jay Cortez buys us, right? And then what happens is, when Jay Cortez comes in, that's like taking Anheuser-Busch buying a small craft beer maker. Now you have billions of dollars of resources to put into this super premium aspect of your portfolio. And what happens is, they start making the factory beautiful, and they start buying the best materials, and because they have this machine made business that can consume all the other parts of the cow, right? Now they're no longer buying Nicaraguan tobacco from a pre-industry company like Olivas. Now they're making their own second viso that goes into their machine-made product to make it, because Nicaragua tobacco is the best in the world. So now they're making their machine product better, and they're able to focus the resources and the efficiency in on the super premium side. So this idea that in most businesses, the bigger you get, the more efficient you get, that's not true in tobacco because of the limited aspect of the resources. So, I remember when I very first came to Estelí in 2010, 2011, Henry, Kiki, took me out to his farm because we were looking for Arapaca wrapper, and they had some that we wanted to look at. And Karen can tell you, he has a house that he was building there by his farm. It was kind of halfway done. It had kind of stopped when he had gotten sick. And he was telling me, don't make the mistake of getting too big, because once you get too big, you can't stop growing. You have to get bigger. You either settle at this level and figure out how to create a model both in the US and here that's efficient and profitable, or you have to try to be Scandinavia tobacco. There's no middle ground. You have to stop at these way stations of efficiency, and once you step out of that way station to get bigger, you have to go all the way to the next one. If you stop in the middle, you die, because what happens is you start becoming inefficient in one of these troughs of efficiency, and you start losing money. And unless you get to the next trough, you don't make it. And so what happens is you get inefficient, you start losing money, you start losing market share, and then all of a sudden you just disappear. And that happens to a lot of cigar companies that don't understand these dynamics.
Skip, just a quick question from one of our viewers over on YouTube. John asks, as with many small companies in the US, could multiple of these small companies together outsource some of their back office operations to gain better economies of scale and to avoid those bows and those inefficiencies that you were talking about?
I mean, you could, but I mean, I can give you an analogy, right? The problem is that there's a lot of Cubans in this business, right? So the working together aspect is a little bit more complicated. I'll give you an example. There's a neighborhood in Estelí, and Karen can tell you this. She knows very well this neighborhood. It's called Riviera. They call it Little Hialeah. So it's over there, kind of on the road that goes by the Uno that goes out to AJ's factory. And all the fancy guys live out there. I don't live out there because I'm not, that fancy. But there's an entry gate, and they have a security shack there. And for years, that security shack was empty because every single house had private security, right? So instead of getting together and saying, let's pay for a security guard to stand in the front, and then a couple to rove around or whatever. Instead, they could never agree on, just doing that. So they all had their own security. So Gus Cura, who owns Nica Prosa, and maybe I'm speaking out of school, but I really don't care. So Gus Cura put a gate in on the side so that he could go straight from his facility into the office. And he kind of asked around, and the story goes, he asked around, hey, I'm going to put in an automatic gate. You guys want to all pitch in? We could do this. Nobody pitched in. These millionaires, none of them pitched in. So he put the gate in, and then all of a sudden, once these guys saw the gate there, they're like, hey, we want to come in through the side gate. So he started selling the clickers for like $500 or $600 a piece to recoup his money. So I guess it's theoretically possible that people could work together, but a lot of the small factories, like, for example, a good example would be cardboard boxes. Karen, I don't know if you've had challenges with cardboard boxes. So you make all the cigars, and then you have to ship them to the United States or to Europe. So you need cardboard boxes, and you would think that this would be an easy thing to source. But there's really one company in Nicaragua in the free zone called Astro Carton that makes these boxes. and you have to order a huge amount in order for it to be efficient. So a lot of us small factories have gotten together and we've said, hey, let's order a bunch of these. We all have to kind of agree on the size that we want. Let's order a bunch of them. But then this guy over here wants his name on them. This guy over here wants a different size. This guy over here. So it's hard to get everyone to agree. I mean, part of the reason, people with capital would go into any other business other than tobacco if they were smart. So most of the people that are in our business are in the business because they want to do things the way that they want to do it, me included. So theoretically, that's possible, but in practice, it's not very possible. I mean, what would you say? What would you say, Karen?
Yes, that's true. So to have all the possibility to have the production, to have all the raw material that we need is sometimes a little very difficult as a small company. So you're right. You are right in that point, Skip.
We had a question from Rich Lai, who's here with us at the lounge. Rich, fire away.
Rich?
There he is.
Sorry, guys, I'm out on my walk and I'm just listening in. And
the chairman. When you said Rich, I have no idea who you're talking about. Well, you should have said the chairman.
Skip and Karen, it's great to see you well. Great conversation. And I had a question, but it kind of led me to another question. And it's I guess a business question for your companies, is that in staying the size that you are and have been, over time, it just kind of goes that you would eke out as much efficiencies as you can, and your profits would diminish over time just because costs would go up. That's kind of my understanding in layman terms. But what would cause you to consider moving up to the next level? Or would you just keep on eking it out at the current level
I mean,
that you're at?
So I'll speak for myself. It's like I said, we make really, really good money where we're at. I mean, as a percentage of revenue, we probably make probably double what Drew Estate makes, for example. But we're a very small organization, so we do really well. We make a good living for ourselves. We're able to take care of our employees. Everybody here in Austin has health insurance. Everybody here in Austin makes more than $65,000 a year. Down in the factory, I would say we probably make 20 or 30% more than the average factory pays. We would do full healthcare. We do private healthcare outside of the system, the national system. We do educational reimbursement. We do all kinds of quality of life things at the factory level. If we decided to get bigger, we would become more efficient until we reached that, $5, $6, $7 million mark, million cigar a year mark. And the fact is that we just don't want to get to that. We just don't want to make the move to that next level. So we're staying at this kind of a waypoint that we're at. In terms of over time, the costs are going up. And so what's happened is, I'll give you a point of reference, Mr. Lai, Chairman Lai. When I first started coming to Estelí in 2010, 2011, Karen, as I remember, Estelí Ligero was about $4.25 a pound. And you need about, if Estelí Ligero is one component in a blend, you need about 1 pound per thousand. So you need 4 pounds per thousand. So, or 40 pounds per thousand. So you need 10 pounds to make 1,000 cigars. So that component alone has gone from 425 to somewhere around 950, 925 a pound, right? So if you're growing it, it still costs you $2 a pound. If you're buying it, it costs you more than double, right? So our cigars, our Cro-Magnon Cranium, for example, one of our most popular cigars, has gone from somewhere around $7.50 to about $10 a cigar because of that component. So even at $10.50, we're still $3, $4, $5 cheaper than, say, a Liga Privada number 9 at that level. So for a small company, because we're very efficient, we can pass a lot. There's a lot more value in our cigars. So a Toro, U.S. Connecticut broadleaf Toro that has heavy tobacco, like a La Liga Privada, we're $3, $4 cheaper than a Liga Privada. So there's a lot of room for us to increase price when costs go up without having kind of the I guess the reduction in demand. So so I think for us, we handle the cost increases just by doing price increases, but we also still are able to find more efficiencies. I'll give you an example. When we ship cigars from the factory to the United States, we put a heavy plastic band around the cartons with a clasp that secures them. This is also for custom security, but it's also for continuity of the package. We used to have to buy that at Uline, ship it to Nicaragua, pay the taxes and everything. And that used to cost us about $6 a carton. But because our boxes are only 21 by 16 by 17, we found that Nica Prosa that used very large boxes, they use the same material when they shipped between Ecuador and Nicaragua. Instead of us buying that clasp and that material, we actually started using their waste. So when they cut their boxes open, they have this 60-inch long piece of this material. We only need something like 40 inches. So we were able to recycle their trash into being, for us, that saved us about $12,000 a year. So those kinds of things here and there, they add up. And so you're able to take the cigar business, Karen can tell you, is a business of pennies. So when you take a penny here and a half a penny here and 3 pennies there, when you're making $1 million of something, that's 20,000 here, 30,000 there. And so in that way, we're able to stay efficient without getting bigger.
Thank you, Skip. Someone also asked, when's Wonderlust coming to the States? But I don't think it ever will.
No, it never will.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. One reason is we use Cuban tobacco. I don't really say that too much, but because we use Cuban tobacco, and then also because we just can't find enough of the high quality, dark, heavy Matafina. So when Philip Schuster goes to Brazil to buy wrapper for his production, and he makes machine-made production with high quality tobacco, he sources our Matafina. Some years we get none, and some years we get 3,000 or 4,000 pounds. And because of that, we can only make 50, 75, 100,000 cigars a year. So we've limited the production to Europe.
Thank you.
It's such a good cigar. It's a brilliant cigar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's very much like Schuster's trio. I think it's Johan, is it called what's the green cigar that Schuster makes? The machine made? That's 100% Cuban tobacco with the Matafina.
You mean the Brazil Tuileries?
Yeah, that one. It's very similar to that, but it has more Nicaraguan filler as well.
It's much more elegant, I think. Your cigar is much more elegant than the Brazil Tuileries. The sweetness and the spiciness is the same, but the aroma is much more elegant cigar, much more balanced.
Yeah. So in that case, what we did is we took this machine-made cigar, which I think is excellent at for the price that it is, and then we made it into a handmade super premium version of that.
Let me ask you a question, and allow me to just interject here, Reinhard. Why you were just talking about the prices, and I want to touch on this point as it is still hot in the discussion. Why is craft or boutique, well, in this case, craft, perceived as being more expensive than mainstream?
Well, I think, yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Go ahead, Karen.
As a small factory, our costs of production are very higher than the largest factory. So it means that our cost is so even that we can try to keep or maintain the cost, even that to have some kind of profit. So our cost of production is very higher than the largest company. So was one of the point that why the price of big cigars sometimes is a little more expensive than the premium cigars.
Does that in a way negate the point of efficiency that Skip was touching upon?
That's part of that, yes.
So here's what you have to understand. If you took a graphic of a 6-inch cigar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said what percentage of so let's say this 6-inch cigar cost $12, or let's say it costs $15 in Germany, for example.
Okay.
So immediately 1/3 of the cigar. Well, I don't know who the audience is. Let's say the audience is U.S., right? So let's say you have this $15 cigar. We'll use a Liga Bravada number 9, for example, just so that we're picking on jurisdiction. Jonathan's a friend of mine, and I know Jonathan wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for Kiki. So it's a great example. So let's say you take this $15 cigar. Number one, in the United States, 1/2 of that $15 is 100% for the retailer. In Germany, for example, 1/3 of that is for the retailer, and 1/3 of it is for the distributor. But let's say the U.S., $7.50 of that $15 is the retailer. So you take that off the table. So now you have half of the cigar left. Of that other half, you have it breaks up into basically 3 parts. 1/3 of it is the factory. 1/3 of it is the producer, and 1/3 of it is the United States government, right? So you take the $7.50, you take $2.50 of it, or now we're down to $7.50. You're down to let's say
$5 for easy math.
Let's say of this $7.50, 1/3 of it is logistics, the government, taxes on income, taxes on excise tax, and all of that. Mm-hmm. By the way, the retailer is paying a large percent of taxes on their side. But so when you get down to actually what it costs when it lands in Miami, you're talking of this $15 cigar, you're really talking about $2.50, right? So if the producer of that cigar is doing a lot of advertising in Cigar Aficionado and Cigar Journal, and they have 10 sales reps out on the road, staying in hotels and all that, that's where their portion of the money is going to. But of this $2.50 of it being landed, let's just assume every cigar costs somewhere between $1.50 and $2 to make. So let's call it $3 for a cigar to be made, right? Let's just assume 1/3 of that is just, it really costs, I'm going to be honest, it costs about $1.50 to make every cigar in the world. It doesn't matter what cigar it is. About 50 cents of that $1.50 is a wrapper. Something like Matafina, maybe it's 80 cents. Something like Ecuador, Connecticut, maybe it's 35 cents, but it costs about 50 cents. The filler, which let's say you have 3 or 4 fillers, they cost about 50 cents. So the tobacco is about 2/3 of the cost of making a cigar. The other third is the labor. So you have the people who take the desperillo, the secadero, the moedero. You have all the labor of that. You have the labor of the packaging. You have the labor of the buncher and the roller. The buncher and the roller are only making about 25 or 30 cents of that, 30, 40 cents of that cigar. So, to your question, it's really about when you're talking about material, it doesn't change much. But the material costs a lot more relative, 2 to 1 more than the labor, right? So when you start changing the material cost, it affects the overall cost of the cigar a lot more than changing the labor cost. If it was up to me, and I'm notoriously more progressive than most of my peers, but if it was up to me, I would pay double for labor, and it would only add 50 to 75 cents to the overall cost of the cigar at the register. But that's just me. But if I started paying double what everyone else pays, I would be ostracized. There would be no way I could buy tobacco, because the people that are making millions and millions of cigars a year wouldn't be able to make as much money, I guess is the best way of saying it. So I'm probably edging into areas of that are making people uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, the point of it is that, to Karen's point, that the material and the labor and the kind of the slim margins at the factory level are a very small percentage of the overall cost of the cigar. When you start trying to get to get bigger, when you start increasing the cost on the marketing side, it affects the overall cost of the cigar a lot more than the cost on the material side, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
So if Karen wanted to put an ad into Cigar Aficionado, or if Karen wanted to add a salesperson to handle California, or if Karen wanted to even buy a economy class ticket to go to Europe to travel around to a few stores, that's going to affect the cost of the cigar a lot more than the material or labor cost at her factory.
It's a very interesting point. And Ray, your friend who is just by the fireplace in the freezing cold UK outdoor scene, had a great question regarding aging. Ray, do you want to fire away?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great show again, Reinhard, Riyad. It's really, really appreciative again. And
that's a fascinating mustache, by the way. Magnificent.
Great talk, Karen. Great talk, Skip. It's my question's basically just a maybe additional question to what you just explained about the cost of the labor, the cost of the tobacco, and there's probably every brand have cigars which they say they use tobacco aged for 5, 6, 9 years, 10 years old. Why that cigars cost way more, and what's basically the percentage cost of the aging the tobacco?
So here I'll try to answer this one quickly, Karen, because I'm dominating this. Originally this whole thing was supposed to be just me, but I wanted to have Karen, so I want to make sure Karen has plenty of time to say what she wants to say. But here's the thing: you have to separate the bullshit of marketing from the reality of what the value, what is a real value added process into the cigar. It is true that time is money, and it is true that heavier texture tobaccos take longer to get to the point where they're proper for a cigar. That's why you see, and I don't want to piss off all the Cuban aficionados in the audience, but the reality is that the people who make cigars in Nicaragua put a lot more time and effort into the tobacco before it ever becomes a cigar than say Cuba. And for the most part, after a cigar is made, the only thing you're trying to do is equalize the humidity within the cigar, because you have to wet the wrapper and you have to, you have to dry the filler. So there is no huge advantage for a Nicaraguan cigar that's made with properly fermented tobacco, in my opinion, for the cigar itself to be aged for a long time after it's rolled. If you have air conditioning in your aging rooms, which I don't know if Karen does, we do not. Because we do not have air conditioning in our aging rooms, our aging process is between 3 and 4 months. But the process of getting the tobacco to the proper fermentation before we make a cigar for Arapiraca is 6 or 7 years. For Jalapa Seco, it's 3 months. So it really depends on the tobacco, how long it needs to be fermented before you make a cigar. But if you make cigars only with properly fermented tobacco, how long it ages after it's rolled is dependent on the humidity and the process you engage in to take the humidity out of the cigar. If properly fermented tobacco sits in a warehouse for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't think it makes a big difference. That's me. As long as it was in the pilon for the proper amount of time, as long as it was in the curing barn for the proper amount of time. If it's really, really super heavy tobacco and it's in the curing barn for 90 days instead of 70 days, and if it's in a pilon for 120, 150 days instead of 90 days, then that is properly fermented tobacco. Once you properly ferment it and you put it into a bulk or into a pack or a quintal, that tobacco starts to lose flavor and body, in my opinion. The exception would be there's certain kinds of wrappers that are not fermented, like Cameroon and Ecuador, Connecticut, Sumatra. Those kinds of wrappers, if they are taken from the curing barn into a bulk and very slowly have this third fermentation over multiple years, like Arapiraca, it benefits them. But when someone tells you I found tobacco in the back of the warehouse that's got 10 years on it, what you're basically telling me is this tobacco has lost most of its flavor. Now, that's not to say that if you take tobacco from the field to the curing barn to a pilon to a cigar in less than 6 months, that it's going to be good. You're rushing the process. It's not going to be good. But this whole idea of having 15-year, 20-year age tobacco is kind of a bullshit marketing thing, in my opinion. I mean, Karen, what do you think?
That's true. So many companies, well, as an owner of Cigar Lounge, I see many big or largish companies that in the boxes has 18, 25, 12 years aging tobacco. So in the reality, it's really hard to keep all the roof material aging at that time. So for a small company, I think that we can change, we can have more reality, or we can have more credibility in the thing that we do. Because one of the things that I might propose is, of course, when I buy raw material, as we say before, we are a company that has a vertical process from the seed to your hand. So I'm growing my own material. So I am almost 100% that my raw material has all the process of fermentation and aging to then produce my cigars. When my cigars are already made, we are talking that the raw material is already aging. Then we have some kind of process to dry the cigar, to put in our bodegas and in the area that the cigar takes some kind of time to be aging, that the cigar properly has take all the oils, all has a good temperature or something like that. But yes, I'm sorry for my English, but yes.
No, it's great. It's great.
The reality is
You're
another.
doing great.
want some kind of a bunch of small factories, and that we had more time to age our cigar because we don't have a lot of demand, so we keep the quality in our production. So we are focused also and to bring on the market some aging cigar that burn properly, that have amazing combustion, and the dry is in the good condition too.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Love the answers. Love you guys.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, tobacco is not wine. I mean, think about whiskey, right? So you make whiskey or rum, right? And it is a distillate, and it is fresh. Like in the case of rum, it's aguardiente. Is that right, Karen? So
Yes.
it's just white distillate. The time that it spends in the barrel tells you how much of the wood imparts onto the actual aguardiente. So if it's in the barrel for 30 years or 20 years, then what happens is it has more time in the barrel, it has more color, it has more impartation of the wood onto the liquid. Like in a lot of cases, whether it's the bullshit flavor descriptors or whether it's the just the marketing aspect, what happens is people, think time equals quality, time equals flavor. And in the case of tobacco, that's absolutely not true. There's some tobaccos that taste very, very at their peak within 6 months of leaving the field. And there's some tobaccos like Arapiraca that if you ferment them correctly, you have to do it very, very slow and very, very low temperatures over time to not lose the characteristics of that tobacco. But once a cigar is rolled, if it's kept at the proper temperature and humidity, if it was made using good tobacco, it doesn't matter how old that cigar is. But there are certain cigars that will just at some point completely lose the characteristics because they off gas and they lose the oils and the other things that make that tobacco good. So because of this Cuban kind of story that's created, because when I started buying cigars in the 90s, you had to keep a Cuban cigar for 2 or 3 years before it was even smokable, right? And
Sure.
that was because the tobacco they were using was not properly fermented. And that hasn't really changed, right? I mean, at Laguito, there's a few lines like Bajique and a few other things that have changed that. But for the most part, I could speak for the cigars we make. When we put them in a box, they are ready to smoke. And if you keep them because they're super heavy tobaccos with a lot of texture, they will grow milder over time. I have a box of cigars here that is the first cigar box we ever made. And we smoke one a year, Mike and I. And every year, it gets a little bit milder. It loses a little bit of its strength. And there will be a point, at some point, where it will completely lose its flavor and become boring. And at that point, we'll just give all the rest of them away and start over, right? But the idea that the longer something is aged, it's not like a bottle of wine, right? It is tobacco. And even if you keep it at perfect temperature and humidity, that tobacco will lose flavor over time. What you really want to focus on is whether the tobacco is properly fermented before you put it into a cigar. And a lot of times, and Karen can tell you this, that 2 or 3 years ago, Estelí Ligero was very hard to get. Some people started using Viso. People start taking stuff out of the pilon too soon. Some people heat up the pilon too much in order to ferment it faster so they could get it into a cigar. That's where if a cigar is made with tobacco that's not properly fermented, it will never taste good. If you keep it in a humidor for 5 years, maybe it'll become smokable, but it'll never be good.
Yes, talking about the process of fermentation, and I agree with you, but also has some kind of time. And I am 100% agree with you. So all depends that the tobacco, the raw material that we are using to produce the cigar. So if the tobacco has the perfect, really good fermentation, makes the difference. And I agree with you.
Excellent. Karen, I want to zoom in on you now and focus a bit more on you. Skip has had a lot of airtime, and I want to just park him on the side for a bit. To my knowledge, and excuse my ignorance if that's not the case, you're the only female factory cigar owner currently in the market. Is that true?
I am the owner, the only woman who born and raised in Nicaragua, who has his own factory and also his own farm in Nicaragua. There are many female women that has his own factory in Nicaragua. They come in from other country, but the only person who born and raised in Nicaragua, who has the factory and farm, and also be part of the Chamber of Tabacalero for Nicaragua, that's me.
Okay, so respect to that, congratulations to that, and definitely I raise my hat to that.
There should be more, by the way.
There definitely should be more.
I wish there was more.
There definitely should be more. Karen, talk to us about the role of women in the industry. Talk to us about how women can be very proactive and change this industry. Talk to us about how women can change the whole perception that this is a male-dominated industry, and how they can, and I have nothing but respect when I say that, change the perception that is there about cigars and women on social media.
Well, for the beginning of your question, I am the person who started in the cigar industry working as a rolling cigar in a cigar factory. That cigar today is my cigar factory. So I am the person who has been in this industry working on the other side of the business. Now I am the face of the company. I am the person who has a brand, the person who running a small operation in Nicaragua, who has a factory, who has a farm. But my beginning or my origin start in the other side of the cigar industry. Mm-hmm. Mostly, I can say that 70% of the people who work in the cigar factory are women. So even that is a industry live in very amazing by men. So at that time, we need to recognize all the work that woman has been in the industry. So 70% of the people who work in the cigar factory, even in the farm, are women. So right now, so for me to be some kind of representation of the woman in the cigar industry is really hard, because so we try to break some kind of stereotypes so that woman doesn't have the knowledge to be here. As a woman, I say that I am the knowledge. Every day I learn every day about the industry. There are some kind of things that doesn't help me too much as my language, as my English, which is really bad. But at the
You're doing great.
At the end of the day, I not to speak too much. At the end of the day, that's the product, that the thing that we do for the cigar industry is to bring to the people amazing cigar, no matter is the manufacturer, it is a woman or it is a man. So the thing is to bring to the market amazing cigar with amazing quality. So as a woman, I am one of the many amazing women in the industry. I am really proud of being nominated by second time in Tobacco Business Magazine as the Woman Business of the Year, the cigar industry. Made me feel really proud. Means that the legacy means that everything that my mentor, that my husband taught me, has been working, he taught me many things, so made me feel really proud about that. It's not easy. I think that men has more opportunity, but we are here breaking a stereotype, showing or give some kind of demonstration to the male person who has in the industry, that we have the knowledge. And I am here not because I am female. I am here because I have a legacy, because I am working really hard to represent the name of my husband and also my name. So I combine all the things together as a woman in the cigar industry.
How do you split your time between Miami and Estelí?
Well, United States opened the door for me to growing in the cigar business. But I don't change, never. Estelí was the city that I born. That's the city that is growing a lot because many people have skipped trust in my country and invest in my country because we have many good things. First, we had the amazing land, we had a volcanic soil. So give the opportunity to many people come to my country and invest in my country and believe in my country. And I can say I don't change Nicaragua or Estelí for no other country. I am really blessed to be here in the United States that opened me the door to be here today, to have the capacity to do or introduce the thing that I do in Estelí, Nicaragua as a small boutique cigar, as a small factory, and bring to all United States or bring to the world my legacy. So I am really thankful, but of course, Nicaragua is in my heart. So I love my people in my factory, is my family. So we had people who has been working with me for more than 20 years. So means a lot to me. I owe too much to Nicaragua. I am here representing all the women in the cigar factory, but because that was my beginning. So I am here also to represent all the women that are manufacturers. And I am here to represent all the women who are smoke aficionada, that they are beginning in this industry to start to smoking cigar. I am really happy because more women are with the enthusiasm to smoke cigar, to learn more about cigar. So that's an amazing thing to me.
Okay, and finally, I have one more question to you because I can't help it. I mean, Skip just threw just a little seed, and I have to touch on that seed, which is the relationship you had with Jonathan and your impact on the business of Jonathan Drew. I gotta hear this. I can't.
Well, Jonathan is an amazing person.
Of course.
Okay, hold on. Jonathan's a little bit. Jonathan Drew is a little bit crazy, but he is an amazing person. But right, Karen?
Yeah.
He is a little bit crazy.
It's a particular guy. It is a particular guy. It is a particular guy. But yes, we had a really good relationship with him. I can say the person more close to me in the cigar industry is Jonathan. Since my husband was his close friend, he helped him to growing the company when he started from zero. So, and I am really proud that Jonathan always mentioned him as the person who helped him to growing his business. So I think that we are a community. I think that in Nicaragua, we had a really good relationship between all the manufacturers. Could be more united. Could be, but I think that we are doing great as a member of the Tobacco Chamber of Commerce of Nicaragua. So we are 16 or 18 members, Skip. I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't remember exactly, but we are working together, and between the other thing that we had together, we had a really good relation. We are informed, and everything that is happening in the cigar industry refer in terms that everything is happening in Nicaragua and all the stuff. But I think that we are doing great job as a family business, a family industry in the business.
You know what, Karen,
So-
if I might just add one more thing. The beauty about this business is you learn every day. And compared to you and Skip, I'm in no position to say something like this, but I have to excuse my ignorance, is that before this interview, I did not know much about K by Karen. And when I've done my research, all what I can tell you is I cannot wait to have your cigars in Dubai. I've had the cigars of Skip and they have been an amazing explosion. People just love Roma Craft here. And I cannot wait to have your cigars in Dubai. So respect, that's all I can say.
Thank you so much. As I said before, K by Karen Bergers is a part of continuing the legacy of Don Kiki Cigars. So we have to bring some new product to the market. So the idea is to bring K, because K means a lot to me, means his name and also my name, and bring to the market some new product to the market. And for me, since my husband passed away 2013, be involved in the process of blending cigar has been amazing. So we were in the top 18 in the top 25 Cigar Journal magazine as the best cigar with my first blend, which is Don Kiki Platinum. So amazing. For me, that was amazing. And also, I would love to be in Dubai. So maybe you are not too far, because we are in process to do that. So maybe you had the opportunity to try my cigars soon in Dubai.
Excellent.
You know, I think something that Karen talks about is really important to understand is, I think because of the revolution, there's a demographic difference in Nicaragua in general between male and female. Generally, you'll find 50% male, 50% female in most demographic situations. But in Nicaragua, and I don't know the official numbers, but I would say somewhere between 65 and 70% of the population of Estelí is female, because the males who could actually earn have left the country to earn, or they died in the revolution. So there's a demographic difference in Estelí opposed to most places. But when you take on top of that the women are generally the head of household in most Estelí households. So whether it's a grandmother or the matriarch of the family, generally the women, especially for the 90% of the population, are the head of household in terms of earnings and in terms of managing the household. So in our factory, I think we're somewhere around 80%. I think it's like 75% women, 75 to 80%. It changes, but even in the largest of factories, it's at least 60, 65% female. And by the way, they call Estelí the Diamante de las Segovias. So part of that is because the most beautiful women in Nicaragua come from Estelí, but also because it is it is the fact that even in the revolution, there's a documentary called Las Sandinistas, and it's about the women who, even in the revolution, the head, of course, the men get most of the credit, they get whatever, but the women that led the revolution, the women who were responsible for putting strapping a gun on and going and winning the independence of the people of Nicaragua from the Somoza era, it was mostly women. So even in the revolution, it was more than 50% women that were fighting. And so today, what you find is the most capable, the most responsible, the most contributing people from a perspective of percentages in Estelí is women. So this is where part of the demographic, sociological, economic aspects of this kind of second, third world country come into these demographics is, if it was not for the cigar industry, and we had a lot of discussions around this with politicians and with the embassy and the other places, is for the most part, Estelí is separate from the problems that exist in the country, in the sense that we are an entire community focused around the production of tobacco and the making of premium cigars. And for the most part, whether you're talking about the farms, whether you're talking about the people that plant or cultivate tobacco, whether you're talking about the people that make cigars, whether you're talking about the people that package and handle all the logistic requirements around cigars, you're talking about a livelihood that provides for this female head of household. You know, if a woman has a domestic abuse situation in Estelí, she can separate herself from that situation because she can make a good living in the cigar industry. If a woman has a husband that leaves the country for one reason or another, she can make a living and provide for her family in the cigar industry. And so if you separate the owners, which is really kind of tied to capitalism and machismo and a lot of things that Karen, I'm sure, could talk about, what really is the most important aspect of this cigar industry in Nicaragua, particularly in my factory, I'm sure this is true in Karen's factory, is that we're able to provide a good living. An average cigar roller, at least in my factory, an average female cigar roller or a woman in desparillo or a woman in packaging makes 2 or 3 times the minimum wage, almost as much as a public sector teacher or public sector doctor, a public sector legal person. Making cigars in Estelí is about as good as you can do in terms of making an upper middle class living. And the majority of those people doing that are women. And so it's super critical to the stability of our industry, but also to the economy of Estelí, that the cigar industry thrive, because it provides so many other socioeconomic advantages to a woman who's working in the cigar industry, who's moved up over years in the cigar industry in Estelí, is a completely different situation than a woman who is born in and lives in, say, Rivas, who depends on the tourism industry, or a woman who lives in, say, Bluefields, who depends on, say, fishing, right? Estelí is a place where a woman can be born and can make a living, and if she devotes herself to all of the aspects of a cigar factory, whether it's the administradora, the people who do the payroll, the people who do the inventory, the people who handle the materials, other than lifting heavy stuff, the most important people in the factory are all female. That is just a fact. I think that's true whether it's small or whether it's a large factory. So the fact that Karen, who I remember when I first met Karen, I thought maybe there was something wrong with her eyes because she was married to Henry. So I asked Kiki. I said, is there something wrong with her eyes? Does she not know, what you look like? But the fact that Karen has come from being, Karen went to school with Arlen, my partner. The fact that someone who can go from just a lower middle class, average kind of family to getting a good education and can gain the experience in the factory, and then also go from actually touching the tobacco to managing the supply chain to actually now managing the retail operation and the sales and marketing aspect in the United States. That kind of mobility within the class system for a female in Estelí is as good as it is anywhere in the world, in my opinion. In my case, if it was up to me, the majority of people who are responsible for anything significant in my factory would be female, because they're just more dependable. They're smarter. They did better in school. They focused, and they also have responsibilities. And because they have responsibilities, they're very dedicated to the work. And so, Estelí is so much different than a lot of parts of Central America. And having 7 sisters, having 3 daughters, I like the aspect of working around, and in a lot of cases answering to the women in the factory.
Honestly, Skip, thank you so much for that. Respect to that, and we couldn't agree more with you on this. This has been a mind-blowing session, and I think we can go on for another couple of hours. But before Reinhard wraps up, I want to take one more question that is a woman to a woman, and I think it's long overdue. So Valerie, the floor is yours.
Hi, sorry. Karen, a lot of your cigars receive some very, very high scores. So clearly you have a lot of respect in the industry. And we've heard in previous episodes about how the male cigar blender approaches making a cigar. Do you think your process is different? Are there different aspects of what you look for in blending a cigar? Or would you say the process is pretty much the same, whether it's male or female?
I can say that it's pretty much the same, because we are talking, when we are doing some blend, we are not thinking in a female or male market. So we are thinking in that everybody has almost the same palate. So as we are choosing different food, or you are choosing a different kind of wine. So for me, when I try to create some blend, so my idea is to create some blend for every kind of the market, even the female or male market. At the time they make the blends, so my focus is to create something different, to the other blend that I have in my portfolio, and to bring something better, something new, or something with better quality, or something different than the thing that I have in the market.
Thank you.
Now, I couldn't agree more with what Riot said, and what an incredible session it's been indeed. So many incredibly interesting insights, some very detailed numbers and nuances that Karen and Skip shared with us here, and I can only thank both of you from heart for everything that you have presented us with and all our viewers with. And of course, to all those people, to our family and friends out there, thank you for taking the time and joining us as always. If you haven't, please make sure to go to the official website of this year's virtual Puro Sabor Festival, and that is lightemupworld.com/Puro Sabor 2021. And stay tuned for all our upcoming content, all the upcoming episodes. And as you very well know, we have amazing giveaways for our dedicated fans to the festivals. So there's 2 tickets to the next Puro Sabor in Nicaragua, as well as boxes of cigars that are comprised of all the members' cigars. They are waiting for you. So make sure to stay tuned, and please come and join us yet again. We've covered the intricate details of small-sized manufacturing, but indeed, I think we all realized, and we knew it anyways, that it's truly the big factories at heart that we're talking about here. And it's all those important parts of an entire ecosystem that make the premium cigar world what it is. And Karen, Skip, again, thank you from heart for sharing those wonderful insights with us. And Rod, my dear brother over in Dubai, thanks for everything that you brought to the table today, and thanks for your dedication, my friend.
With pleasure.
Karen, Skip, final words, all up to you.
I'm glad Karen could join me. I think that there's, I think that there's more small production factories that I'd like to see. What we're working towards is seeing more of these small guys coming into the support of the chamber, because Puro Sabor is very important in the sense that it brings people to Nicaragua, economic activity, but the day-to-day activity of the chamber is really around the making sure as an industry that we are communicating with the government of Nicaragua, making sure that our free zone and 382 kind of processes are running smoothly, making sure that the big supply chain aspects are addressed, whether it's cellophane or cardboard boxes, making sure that the import and export process is working the way that it's supposed to, whether it's through times of political kind of unrest or whether it's times of prosperity. Us working together as a group is super important, because the livelihood of 50,000, 60,000 people in this very small part of a very poor country depends on us working together and making sure that this industry, whether it's political challenges in Europe or political challenges from Washington, D.C., that we're able to function as a group to keep this industry thriving. For me, the fulfillment that I get when I hate getting off the plane. I hate the 3-hour drive to Estelí, which I'm sure Karen can attest to. But once I enter Estelí, once I drive past the hospital and I am amongst my people, my focus 100% is making sure that their day-to-day lives are better than they would be otherwise. That people have jobs, that people have health care, that people have education, that their kids are not working in tobacco unless they want to in the future, and that they don't have to leave the country to make a good living. They don't have to leave the country to have a good education. They don't have to leave the country to have good health care. And tobacco is a medium. I love cigars. I love, on this side, I love smoking cigars. But for me, once I get past that line on the highway, on the Pan American, and I enter the country, for me, it's about making the lives of the people that are in that city better, whether we hire 20 or 30 or 80 or 3,000, like some of the big manufacturers. The focus of the chamber is around making the entire industry work so that the economy of Estelí functions so that the people of Estelí have better lives. And so for me personally, that's what my focus is. And I know that the same is true for Kiki, the same is true for Karen, and for all of the other small manufacturers that work every day in Estelí.
What a wonderful final statement. Skip Martin, Karen Berger, thank you very much. And to all of you out there, thanks for being with us here today, here tonight, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks from today. Thank you, goodbye, and good night here from the Light 'em Up Lounge in Puro Sabor 2021.
Skip, Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.